Juretzko. Did I say it correctly? During the height of the Cold War, Werner was a G2 undercover political operative and conducted authorized espionage missions behind the Iron Curtain. Werner was apprehended in action in 1955, where he was accused of and tried for anti-communist activities. He was then sentenced to 13 years of incarceration for so-called crimes against Article 6 of the Constitution of the German Domestic Republic. As a political prisoner, Werner spent 6 years of his imprisonment in the infamous torture chambers of the Stasi secret police in Berlin, Hohenschönhausen. Correct? The notorious Red Ox in Halle, and other inhumane barbaric prisons, such as the Brandenburg Gordon Penitentiary. Today, Werner is a Cold War historian who lives in the Midwestern region of the United States. We are honored to have you here. Please welcome Werner Juretzko.
Thank you kindly for your introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And today, I will give you a short lecture on Espionage 101. Perhaps it was a subject matter which you have never taken in school, so let me allow you to give you a lecture in 101. But before I start, I actually would like to have a raise of hands. And could anyone tell me who is Raymond Benson? Show of hands. Raymond Benson. Raymond Benson. Anybody ever heard of Raymond Benson? No? Okay. Okay. Can I see another show of hands? Did you ever hear the name of James Bond? Can I see a... Okay, fine, fine. Okay, thank you. Well, you know, let's talk about Raymond Benson. See, Raymond Benson, to a lot of people, it's been unknown that he is one of the authors of the James Bond series. Well, later on, we have the pleasure of Raymond Benson. He will be the speaker following me. Well, now let me tell you how I met Raymond Benson. When I heard about Raymond Benson, oh, thanks, man. When I met Raymond Benson, I said, well, you know, we have to get together. That's the guy I heard. He wrote all those James Bond books. And so we had a first meeting, and so we met. And as we met, I asked him, one of my first questions was, I said, you know, Raymond, you wrote all those James Bond books. I mean, the books which actually keep the whole world reading those books day and night. So it's exciting. I said, I only have one question. How many spies have you met? And he looked at me and he said, wait a minute. That's a question. You know, nobody ever asked me that question. You're the first one who asked me that question. Basically, if I think about it, I have never met a spy. And having said this, he reaches in his pouch and he gives me a book fresh from the press, the James Bond. And we all read here, James Bond, High Time to Kill. And on the bottom, you see very small, Raymond Benson. So basically, Ian Fleming only wrote 2 books. And the rest was written, well, here, as later on, Raymond Benson will tell you. So let's go in our program. This is the Great Seal of the Union of the Soviet Socialist Country Republics. And from early days, to me, it has been the Great Seal of Terror. Whenever I do a program, I always dedicate this program to Bandelow, Buryanek, Kogel, Mizera, plus the dozens of other men and women, convicted Cold War spies who lost their lives on the guillotine, and to the memory of all my fellow comrades in chains who spent years of agony in prisons behind the Iron Curtain, and also to the people you are about to meet. Espionage was a weapon during the Cold War. World War II has not come to a closing yet when the Cold War began. How did it start? It was a result of a number of poor, bad, and stupid decisions by the Western allies at the conferences of Tehran, Yalta, and Potsdam. Stalin openly showed his intention to spread communism around the globe, not shying away from using military force. March 1946, at the commencement speech at Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri, Prime Minister Winston Churchill stated that from the port city of Stettin at the Baltic to the Adrian Sea, an Iron Curtain descended over Europe. And the Berlin Lift began shortly after. The West woke up when it realized 4.5 million Red troops stationed in Poland, Hungary, the Soviet zone were ready to push westwards to the Atlantic. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was formed. Formed on the opposite side was the Warsaw Military Pact. The Warsaw Pact spanned from Vladivostok in Siberia to the Fulda Gap in Western Germany, covering 11 of the 24 time zones of our globe. Who was in the Warsaw Pact alliance? These are the flags of the Warsaw Pact member states: Albania, Poland, Czechoslovakia, the Soviet Union, the German Democratic Republic, Romania, Hungary, and Bulgaria. And the pact was established in 1955 and disintegrated March 91 with the fall of the Soviet Union. Why is it called the Warsaw Pact? Well, very simple. It's called the Warsaw Pact because the treaty was signed in the Soviet embassy in Warsaw, Poland. And the logo of the socialistic brother in arms was their goal: together we will defeat American imperialism and the capitalistic Wall Street warmongers. And remember, at least from history, Nikita Khrushchev pounding his shoe at the United Nations, pounding the shoe and threatening the world, "We will bury you." You probably heard it in history. Well, later we'll get back to Mr. Khrushchev. Now, the Berlin Wall. The Cold War was most visible here in Berlin, where NATO and the Warsaw Pact maintained a threatening powder keg set to explode at any time. And Berlin became a bloody battleground. On Checkpoint Charlie, which is known there, was the confrontation between the US and the Soviet Union, where tanks were actually facing each other with loaded barrels. And you know, this was the closest we ever came to a military conflict. The world waited for the first shot. Well, intelligence. Intelligence is a better word for espionage. The West is building up and restoring its military strengths. And the strength of an armed military force lies within the mastery of intelligence. More battles were fought, manipulated, won, influenced by actions far removed from the battlefield. In many cases, not even recorded by history, namely by means of espionage. Basically, to know what the other side has is a battle half won. Not to know is a battle or a mission half or totally lost. Think of the Rosenbergs, the Bay of Pigs, Paul Revere, and other pieces of intelligence which changed the course of history. And the Cold War was no different. Now, let me give you an introduction to Espionage 101. And let's clear up a few things about espionage. We, the United States, do not commit acts of espionage. This is being done always by the other side. We just gather intelligence, right? That you know. So, now, let me get you acquainted with 3 historical events in world, international, and national espionage. So let me talk about the first event and the world's second oldest profession. Now, the first profession, you have to consult somebody else. Dr. Ruth would be the right person. Okay, so let's go back. Some 4,500 years ago, according to the Old Testament, reading from the book of Numbers, chapter 13, 17, 33, the Lord said to Moses, "Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, go into the Negev, and go up the hill country, and see what the land is like, and see the people who dwell in it. Are they strong or weak, few or many? Are they tall or small? And the cities they live in, are these camps or strongholds with walls around them? And the swords, are those short or long?" Well, after 40 days, this man returned and reported the finding, making this the oldest reported spy mission in the world, and also the world's second oldest profession on record. And that's not for you, that's only for people who slept during Bible studies. And, and we see that chapter 13, sent men to spy out the land, spied out the land, spying out the land, and just spying and spying in the Bible. So what does it really tell you? It tells you one thing, that the spy is a creation of God. Now, should you disagree, you take it up with your pastor, priest, or rabbi and tell him he should not tell you all that thing in the Bible. But that's what it is. Thank you. So now let's go to the second event, the spy mission Operation Overflight. Well, okay, I have to go back. Look. Okay. On May 1st, 1955, from an airport in Peshawar, Pakistan, the U-2 takes off with a destination in Bodo Navik. Now, their mission was the same objective: go and spy out the land, see if the swords are long or short. In this case, the swords, technology has changed. The swords were not anymore those swords. The swords at that time were ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missiles, with stationed right there in the area of Kazakhstan, there where you see the plane. And those missiles had names of the targets written on them. And those targets read Chicago, San Francisco, New York. They were all heading our way. And we wanted to know, what is their potential? Are those swords short or long? Okay, here just we see we know what happened to the U-2. It was shut down, and there we see a fragment of the U-2 spy plane, and it shows Francis Gary Powers, the son of the U-2 pilot. And by the way, there is a movie on right now, Bridge of Spies. I encourage you to visit this, to see that movie. I'm going to talk about it. Okay, that is the only piece of the U-2 which is currently in the United States. The rest of the U-2 is in the military museum in Moscow. And we are showing this as in Oshkosh at air show. Okay, so now we know the world's most famous spy exchange. What happened to U-2 pilot Powers? Well, he was exchanged for Rudolf Abel. 1, 2, 3. The force on that picture here. The exchange took back on the Glinica Bridge. Powers for Abels, and all right. Okay. Now, let me go to the third event, and that is my mission, Soviet airfields. Early August 1955, I am crossing the Iron Curtain into East Germany. As a reference only, this was 5 years prior to the 2U incident in 1961. And my mission is the same as it had been 4,500 years ago. Nothing changed. Go and see the strongholds and the swords. Are those short or long? Well, only in my time, 4,500 years later, the swords have changed. The swords at this time are now MiG-15s and MiG-17s. The fuel depots, radar installations, and troop movements, and all other military objective of importance. So my mission went well. Then the unexpected happened. I was caught in action. As shown in the following communication with SAC, the Strategic Air Command in Dallas, and Direct FBI, eyes only, we see a note. G2 agent Marcus lost in the cold. Little gobbledygook here, and as of 9/15/55, the intelligence operative, also known as Werner Marcus and Stanisław Swoboda, failed to maintain contact with his base in West Germany. Now, let me just add an 11-month silence set in. So let me describe to you the U-boat. In October 1946, the KGB established an underground central detainment prison located in Hohenschönhausen in Berlin. A section of cells were without daylight. The treatment of prisoners were physical violence, psychological torture, standing only and water cells, disorientation, isolation, cold, heat, water, noise cells, feeding salty food with the absence of water. This was the most common physical torture. 1951, the prison became under German administration. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. So, what happened to Agent Marquis. Well, we'll hear again from him the first time in November. So during the last days of November in 1955, during the last days in November of 1955, this underground KGB Stasi interrogation cell in East Berlin held two men, prisoner number 12-2 and prisoner number 12-3. From here, prisoner 12-2, British spy 554, Heinz Friedemann, was led to the guillotine and beheaded on December 22nd, 1955. Prisoner G2, prisoner 12-3, G2, United States Army intelligence operative Werner Juretzko, received a sentence of 13 years and was transported to a maximum security prison. I was classified as a maximum security prisoner. This is my prison garb. Later on, if you have a chance, you can go in another section of the safe house. There is a cell door from this KGB prison, and if you open the flap, you can see the prison uniform, this prison uniform on display right here in a safe house. So the safe house has some history. The red arm and leg bands signify a maximum security prisoner to be held in constant isolation. Let's follow just Agent 554 Friedemann. And Friedemann was turned into the KGB by British double agent Kim Philby. This is the final interrogation of British agent 544. He was interrogated by Major General Gerhard Niebling, and who also was my second interrogator. And as we just I followed him a little bit in his later life. In 1945, Niebling was a farmhand. In 55, a lieutenant and interrogator. In 1989, Major General. And in 1990, he was the Deputy Defense Minister and the co-author of the 4+2 German Unification Treaty. What did I do? Okay, step on something, right? We have room. Let me just brush. Okay, that is the presidential pardon for clemency was denied, and British agent Heinz Friedemann, and I also make a reference to U.S. agent Ellie Barchidis during the time in my interrogation. She was my cellmate on the right side, and every morning, day or so, made I never saw that woman. We made a little, like a good morning by a code or scratch on the wall, and one day it stopped. Well, what happened, I learned later on, Ellie Barchidis, she also was then executed. One day she got lost. So, after the clemency was denied, they were transported to the death house in Dresden, and here 46 Western agents were guillotined. These are only those ones I know which were guillotined during my time. Some I met, some I lived the last days with, and some I only heard about. This is a cell block, the place of no return. And this is the execution holding cell. And here is where you live the last moments of your life, see the last ray of light, eat the last meal, mumble the last prayer, and then with an indescribable fear, you will enter the world of darkness forever. This is the protocol of execution, and just let me read the excerpt from my buddy Friedemann. The condemned was notified that his petition for mercy had been denied and that the execution will be carried out during the morning hours of December 22nd, 1955. The condemned remained calm to his announcement, and when asked, he begged to be allowed to write to his family and to smoke. He also begged for something to eat. All his wishes were granted. The condemned spent the night smoking and writing. He kept calm all night and caused no problems. At 02:55 hours, he was shackled and led into the execution room, where in the presence of 3 camerats from the Stasi Berlin and Cameron Dr. Strobeck, chief medical examiner, as well as the warden, the verdict was briefly announced once more. Thereafter, he was handed over to the executioner, and the execution lasted 2 seconds. And the execution took place right here. This is the guillotine. After he was guillotined, the official death of cause was written, and this is a copy of the original execution, and it's in German, and the cause of death tells you acutes Herz-Kreislauf-Versagen. That means heart failure. So basically, you talk to any medical, once your head is chopped off, you have a heart failure there. So what else? Okay, that's a very interesting list. This is the list of the people I had been with, and the dates on here actually show the dates of execution, like in this one, Helen Bartsidis. By the way, she was one of our most important agents we ever had. She was the secretary of the Prime Minister of the German Democratic Republic, and she was, during that time, our girl. Whatever happened in that office, we knew that. And of course, I heard about it later on. They were so mad at her that when she was executed, they turned her around, facing the blade up, ridiculed her before they had the blade come down. There was Ellen. Here we see Heinz Friedemann, that cellmate, prisoner 12-1, and on and on. Well, these are my discharge papers. And so basically, returning after 6 years and 2 weeks, stepping on Western soil again, I filed a 2-word report. Very simple. Mission accomplished. I was alive. There are 2 ways of nobody ever stays in prison. They all leave prison. Leave prison. And there are 2 positions you can leave it. It's a horizontal and vertical. I was lucky enough, I returned and stepped out of that in the vertical position. So, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, this is, that goes a little bit detailed, don't even go there because those things don't even exist. Okay, but there is something very interesting. There's something what happened only a half an hour from here. Well, espionage evolved during the Cold War. I took that line from Eric Murray Remarque's book, Nothing New on the Western Front. And here we are in Waukesha, at the missile base in Waukesha, which is which we desperately want as a part of the Cold War Museum. And there we are. There's Powers, the son of U-2 pilot Powers, and there we see Sergei Khrushchev, the son of Nikita Khrushchev, and of course me then. And there we are now historians. We belong in the Cold War Museum, and we have now people from both sides. So Sergei Khrushchev is in the Cold War Museum. So is John Eisenhower, the son of President Eisenhower. So basically now the children of them get together and discuss what was wrong or right with the Cold War, in any case. But there is not. Now, here, this is a shot taken in the missile silo at Waukesha. And there is Sergei Khrushchev and I. And we were discussing. And as we talked, I just couldn't hold back. And I said, you know, Sergei, do you remember when your old man, wherever he is now, in heaven or hell, we don't know, but he's somewhere out there. You know, when he went and he pounded his shoe on the table in the UN, and he said, we will bury you. I said, you know, when you see him, just tell him, give him my regards, and tell him that Werner said, when you see your old man, tell him that if he would have wanted to bury us, we would have converted him into a mushroom cloud from here on. If it's true or not, I don't know. I talk with my hands, and that is basically where one of the reporters thought I want to choke him. But that was not my intent at all. I'm just gesturing. But so that is basically when I told him, whenever you see your old man, tell him that that's what we would have had. Let me just go there. Okay, this is a document Gosperius. We do not have the time to go in details. Where I escaped from the east to the west, another time. That's another about my activities in the KGB, the fifth column in West Germany. I'm just taking reference to it real fast. Okay, and that is one of my, wait. Okay, that is one from my book. And basically, it is summarizing it, and it says, the seventh spy mission behind the Iron Curtain proved to be the unlucky last, dooming the author, Werner Juretzko, barely 23, to be confined to a communist dungeon. Thrown into an underground prison, literally without a gleam of daylight, he began a 13-year sentence that seemed like several lifetimes stretched end to end, all terminated by new terror through punishment, interrogation, and started anew by entry into one of the 68 underground cells that had become the main interrogation prison of East German state security police. Here is a book which I would recommend, Stasi, The Untold Story of the East German Police. It's written by John Kohler, who here very humbly introduces himself, being the European chief correspondent of the Washington Post. Well, he was for, I believe, 20 years. What actually John Kohler is not saying in here publicly is that he was also the second man in command of General Harrington, who was the chief of the CIA in Berlin. He wrote a book, and actually it was in this book where he actually went through when a declassification process took back, and my name was just removed, and on so and so, that he contacted me and wrote. So there's an article in Stasi. So he actually then, after so many years, revealed my identity as I am the machinist, which was my cover name. So, at this point, thank you, and whatever time we have, I'm ready for some questions, if I can just like that. So, any questions? Yes, sir. Well, you know, it's, you give me a question, I only give you a fast answer. I'm thankful that my mother taught me how to pray. That was just about all what you had. The whole darkness, or whatever it is. Yeah. It was basically my faith. Yeah. And you know, let me just tell you, because you said this, I spent some awful time. I have been in many other cells. I was in a cold cell, and you know, this whatever. That was the worst cell, because I remember that. You know, the worst thing, whatever can happen to you, be in a boat somewhere in the ocean, and you are there with your best friend, and there is only one ring. Live. Now, the same situation. There was the 21st of November, 1955. I will never forget it in my life. I was called up, brought up again, and there is an officer. He just very bureaucratic. He just announced. He said, "Look, prisoner, you're up here. I'm not your interrogator. I'm not even interested in whatever it is. But I'm just having an announcement to make. Here, go here. I just have to announce that you will not be executed. Here, sign." And that was the time where I actually, he had it signed and dated. And this is how I know it was the 21st of November. I already in my mind, I thought it must have been very shortly, like a week before Christmas. I lost track, right? So, and then I went back in my cell, and there a couple of days earlier, Friedemann returned, and there's a story in itself again. And he said, "You know what? I'm going to be executed, and now I live with a death candidate." You know, I mean, he never slept. You know that. But what I saw was there was that little lamp up there, and when he stood, that meant he was just sweating. I don't know where he took that liquid from, but it was just running constantly. It was cold in the sun. And as I looked against that light, that sweat had actually red pigments. And there is, now again, we are coming back to the faith. I think my mother, a very simple woman, country woman, I think in her entire life, she only read 2 books. One was the Bible, which was that thick. And the other was a book on health, and there was everything how to cure from a calf to a child with earaches. One of those things. So there was it. And there she always read those pictures in that Bible. And there she always said, and you know, and there was the time when they led poor Jesus up there and up there, and he was so afraid that Magdalena came and she gave him her scarf, and she wiped off the blood from his face. And and that was just about what hit me there. It might be pretty dumb, but that is basically what it was. So it was faith in this what gets you through. Well, any other question? Okay, now, how much time we have? Then I will tell you a first story how we found. Do we have still 15 minutes? Okay. Now, so people disappeared. When I was released from prison, and I went through the debriefing, and I told my debriefers, well, among other things, I think they are guillotining over there. And well, I was received with a lot of skepticism, and they said, now listen, Werner, we did not send you into the French Revolution, did we? Right, guillotining. Then how do you know that? I said, well, how do I know that? Well, nobody told me, but I heard it. So where did you hear that? I said, well, I heard it in the walls. Oh my God, heard it in the walls. How did you hear it? Well, I heard it by scratching on the pipes. Oh, God. So, how you take an informant who tells you he gets all that information, right? He picks it up from scratching on a wall, from tapping on the pipes, from rumors, and on and on. So basically, that was a thing. You said, okay, you know what? We know the stress you're in. Why don't you just, have you ever been in the Alps? I said, he said, why don't we just get you a week in the Alps and just keep walking here between the mountains and see the reindeer hopping from rock to rock over a thing, and I will go in 2 weeks and, forget all this stuff. You know what? Why don't we send you there? We send you out there 3 weeks. So I'm in the Alps. I've been walking so that, and things are going in my head. I could never forget it. So for many, many, many years, I'm carrying this guillotining. Those guys never showed up, which I lost track of. And then something happened. There's a unification of Germany, and a little cemetery in Tolkowitz, outside from Dresden. The gravediggers, the sun came out, and they are taking their sandwiches, and they sit outside, and there's a kid among them, and he said, "Hey, you guys, have you ever heard of that old gravedigger here? Well, whatever happened? He just, no, you know about this guy. He taught me how to dig the graves, and then he just disappeared. You know that guy who always talked so goofy? He always talked so goofy. He always said, somebody should one day right that tree over there, that grassy area. Somebody should put a shovel there." That's all what he said, right? So, and that kid is just talking about this and this and this, and the kid just talks about it even in a local tavern, and somebody just heard, and he said, "Well, what are you talking, right?" And sure enough, well, make that story short, they went in. They went in right there to that grassy area in Tolkowitz, put the shovel in, and what do you think they found out? They found hundreds of skeletons, including every single one of the 46 of my buddies. They found them right there. That is how they dug them out. And that is how Friedemann was unearthed, early by Chinese, and all the Western agents I just listed on my thing. They were all unearthed there. Just the thing. This is how it worked. Yes, sir. You know, I do have a. It's okay.
Of course, as you've gone through everything, were there any other survivors that you maybe keep in contact with today? Or
Yeah. Well, yes. Good question. Yes. After that, I kept contact with some of them, and over the years. But you know, look, actually, I was one of the youngest one. Let me put it this way. I actually started the story in itself. Read my book, then you see that. I started in intelligence when I was 17 years old. Right? That is when I started, so I was one of the youngest one. I infiltrated the Communist Party and on and on and on and on, okay, before I went into military intelligence. And the other people were always older. They were older, you know. So when last year I met two of my associates, and there it is, very, very sad. In both cases, there is that Peter. He spent 9.5 years, and after he was released, he was successful. He made his PhD in mathematics, worked for IBM's, and now I was sitting with him, you know, and I felt really sorry for him because most of the time he didn't even know who I was. And the other one, very, very successful. I mean, if you wouldn't know the stories, I mean. You know, like today, you are all hackers, crackers, and whatever. In our time, there was no. I didn't even know how to write computer. That word didn't exist. It did not exist. And if, well, the last 3 minutes, 1 minute. Okay. Pardon me? All right. Okay. Well, basically, so the people which were very active, very intelligent, are now actually by age human wrecks. And you know, by the way, I'm 84 years old now, and. So, thank you. So I still remember, and well, so actually, too bad we don't have enough time. And now you got that fellow who really wrote all those books on James Bond, and he is going to talk the rest of it. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Thank you, Werner. Just a reminder, open bar right now.